Aftershocks right here on Aftershocks TV. It's Chris and Matt back again to talk a little industry, and we have a great guest to talk industry with us today. He is he's the lead vocalist and the main songwriter of the band Edge of Forever, and to be quite honest, he's the main songwriter of damn near every single release you've purchased or listened to in the last 5 years. He's a fantastic musician. He's the most prolific writer. I cannot say it enough. He is the most prolific writer today of music. He is Alessandro Del Vechhio. Alessandro, how are you, man?
I'm very good, my friend, and thank you for the introduction.
Absolutely. Well, man, there's no way around it. There's just no way around it. You are so prolific, and you write on so many records, and it kind of leads to where we wanted to go today, which is to talk about not only songwriting as a career, but the importance of it and how much of a difference it can actually make for a band that maybe they're great musically, but they just don't have that person that can do what you do, which is literally sit down and say, okay, I hear this. Well, let's write 10 songs about this. There's a lot of bands, and you know this. I mean, you probably know this better than anybody. There's a lot of bands out there that just don't have that guy, no matter how talented they are. They could all be virtuosos, but none of them can write. And writing is, at least to me, is an instrument as much as a guitar is. No?
Yeah, honestly, in my opinion, and I talk about experience. I talk about this because I've had the experience of being in great bands with great musicians and not be able to develop as a band like we could have. Sorry, because the songs they come before the musicians themselves. I know it's tough to realize and to accept that, but we have to surrender to the fact that what is left after us are the songs. It doesn't matter how good you are if your songs are not good, or you don't find that breaking the wall so that you can speak to many of your fans. It's make it or break it, and it's necessary evil when you have to rely on somebody else to write your own songs. And I've been there myself. The first 2 records of Edge of Forever, we wrote the basic demos, but we were like 70% to the final product, and we couldn't understand what was missing. And we had to rely on producers that could write, and we had amazing songwriters with us, and we could make the records. And that's how my career started, actually, by taking a step back, leaving my pride home and going like, well, maybe we need somebody to help us. And it wasn't easy, especially because we were all kids.
Sure.
But I was the only one in the band actually that understood that, because I knew that our songs had to be strong, first of all. Because I mean, you can practice and you can become great, but without a song, I mean, even great musicians like Malmsteen or Dream Theater or Joe Satriani or Steve Vai, they all had great songs. It doesn't matter how intricate you can write your own music. If the melodies doesn't stick, I mean, it doesn't stick. It doesn't work.
Right. And the interesting thing is you can go the other way too. And I won't name the names because I would if you weren't here, Alessandro, but you might work with these guys, so I won't name the names. But there are definitely bands, significant bands, that don't necessarily have the chops, but they had a good song, and they're super memorable, not necessarily because of their skill, but because the song or the collection of songs made them.
Yeah. Also, a great song is a great blueprint for a musician to shine, right? Because you can be great technically, but people maybe are not able to relate to whatever you do. But if the song is great, it doesn't matter, how fast you play. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter if the
Mhm.
band is a little loose, and we've seen that over the years. If the song is great, everything will translate to the people much better than making it, super perfect and technically right. There's
Right.
no technically right in the music. I mean, there are so many. I mean, if you play a Led Zeppelin record nowadays, it's all loose. It's not perfect, but it's
Mhm.
perfect because the songs were so memorable
Right.
that the playing
Mhm.
then became part of this magic. And that's where the secret is. And it's, again, it all comes back to pride, because everybody wants to pride
Mhm.
themselves, with writing songs for their own band and going like, well, I wrote my own song. I
Right.
am a singer songwriter. It's much cooler than just saying I'm a singer in a band. If you say I'm a singer songwriter, everybody goes like, oh wow, this guy's got knows what he's doing. But the truth is, I mean, like, if you
Mhm.
look at Alice Cooper, Bon Jovi, Kiss, and you can name them all. I mean, they've all been using external songwriters, and their careers. I mean, think Bon Jovi. Bon Jovi's a great songwriter, and Richie Sambora were great songwriters
Mhm.
their own. But what they did on those records, like Slippery When Wet and New Jersey, oh my God! I
Mhm.
mean, there are so many good songs on those records that, I mean, if you want to take a, you know, obviously, if you're the Beatles or if you are Iron Maiden and you have somebody in your camp that's doing that, that's good. It's a win-win. But
Mhm.
music, it's not just by keeping everything in your own camp. Uh, all these pop artists that are singing somebody else's song, but their voices really make those songs translate to the people. So the combination has to be right between what you can give as an artist and the songs that you have.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Certainly.
Yeah, no doubt. And what's interesting too about your resume, Alessandro, is in terms of the artists that you've worked with over the years, you're mainly working with musicians who come from a different generation than you're from. They are a bit older. I'm sure they also have maybe some different musical influences. And I think that that's what I think for me personally, it's one of the most impressive things about what you've been able to accomplish is the fact that you've been able to earn the trust of these established and really big time artists who seem to have full confidence in having you write and record music for them that'll forever be entrenched with their name and brand. I mean, how have you been able to really, not only write but collaborate with them where, there is that sort of generational gap because that's not something that many artists will embrace a lot of times. And you've been able obviously to earn the trust of, all these big time artists.
Well, it happened, in the span of a good 10 years before it it really went that way. But in my
Mhm.
opinion, if you whatever and how big or small your talent is, you have to be competent and professional. First of all,
Mhm.
you gotta have a great
Mhm.
attitude, and especially when you work, with great songwriters, and you're in a room there, writing with them and producing them. Uh, First of all, I always tell myself, well, I'm here because they hear something in what I do that they like. So if
Mhm.
they look for me, they come to me, there must be something that they hear. Uh but I didn't get there, just overnight. I had to
Sure. Mhm.
really understand what was making them special in order to be at the same level with. I'm super humble about that. I'm not saying, well, with all respect to whoever wrote those, great songs that they did in the past, but I have to be at that level. So I have to get there with the same sort of knowledge and know-how and competence that they have. And obviously, those 30 years, 20 years of age difference really meant for me lots of work, because I not only had to create my own style, but I had to understand how they were doing it. So, and you also have to put into the whole situation that I'm from Italy, which is not, very known for being a rock and roll country.
Right.
And so I really had to dig into, whatever situation I had to work with professionals that were better than me. And I don't know if I've been lucky, or I don't know, but I always ended up working with people that were much better than me, so that I could learn by working with them. I could learn all the secrets. And this is something that I always stress the new generation of musicians about. Just don't be proud. Don't think you got your own thing, which is, it doesn't matter how good or bad you are. You have to be humble, because there are people that have been walking, million miles more than you, and you can only learn from them. So obviously I always was attracted by the music I love, obviously. So when I was a kid, I felt that I could have worked with these guys. And and then I started to I always wrote songs. And I have to be honest, I only everything I've been doing, it's because of my songs. It doesn't matter how good I was as a singer or as a keyboard player. They always liked what I could create. So even if I can be good in replicating, especially in the early years when I was touring with Glenn Hughes and Ian Pace, I was able to do all the John Lord stuff and to do all the vocal harmonies with Glenn Hughes. But the game changer came when I started to write songs, and people were, I just out of the blue, people were coming to me going like, well, do you have a song for me? Do you have a song for these artists? Or managers that were like, I heard what you did with, could you do that? The same thing for my artist. And then I wrote an email to Frontiers after I knew them since, I don't know, probably 20, 15 years at that time, or something like that. And I wrote them an email, and I was like, okay, guys, I'm writing songs, I'm producing albums, and the records that I write and I produce for are distributed by you. Do you need songs for your artists? I saw that they were doing that, and I was like, maybe they need a songwriter, an in-house guy that can do that.
Right.
But I knew, but when I got to that point with lots of confidence. When I wrote that email, I was like, maybe you're gonna like what I do. Like, super sure that I could. I knew that I was at that point that I could give them what they maybe were needing, and thank God they were looking for songs in that week, and they said, well, we're creating a record for Robbie LeBlanc called Find Me. Do you have songs for that? And I didn't have songs for that.
Right.
Like, well, but I can write a song for that. And after 3 hours, I sent him a song that it also became the first single of that album. I wrote them a song, a great sounding demo that, I knew that I had to strike. I mean, the first shot had to be good. So I really impressed them. And that really changed our relationship, because they, got all these songs. And in 3 days, I wrote 6 songs for them. And then after those 6 songs, they were like, well, okay, we don't need songs for Robbie LeBlanc anymore, but would you like discussing producing a hardline record with Johnny Gioeli?
Right.
Obviously, yes. But they said, well, but we have to present you to Johnny. So can you write a song so that we can present you as a producer and as a songwriter, so that he can hear the, the what level of partnership you guys can have. And I
Sure.
wrote Fever Dreams, which became the song that resurrected Hardline, and it's, one of our biggest hits. It's got,
Sure.
I don't know, 3 whatever million views on YouTube, and for a certain period of time, it was the most viewed video of Frontiers. And but that story really shows that you have to get to that point. You really have to train. You have to start. You have to write 100 songs before you can get that level of confidence of sitting in a room with Jack Blades, going like, well, okay, Jack, we have to, have this idea. What can we do about it? And talk, at the same level. And because I mean, and obviously, because if you get there and you're like, you're not super confident in your talents, I mean, those guys are freaking monsters. And they can smell talent. And obviously, if you're intimidated by the fact that the day before Jack Blades wrote a song with Tommy Shaw, obviously you're like, oh my God, what? But that also can give you a perception that you're there for a reason, so you got to give your best and beyond.
Sure.
Yeah. So lots of work, and writing is especially writing, but producing, but music. It's all about repetition. It's all about how many habits you can create. You want to be good on an instrument, you have got to create an habit every day. You got to work on that so that it becomes second nature. And one day, I don't know if you guys know Eric Gales, blues guitarist, my favorite artist of all. I really love his way of creating music. It's not just the playing that kills me anyway, but the way he writes songs. And I had the chance to talk to him for a few seconds, and I only said, I don't know, Eric, I never heard something like that. He did a show that was just beyond amazing. And he said, well, it's years of repetition so that it became my second nature. He said, if you ask me to breathe or to play my guitar on stage, it's the same level of effort, natural. And that really, that stayed in my head for years, and it's still there. So also, I mean, writing, I don't know how many songs I get rejected.
Well, how does that go too? When you do writes now for specific, for each artist, I mean, specifically, I mean, how do you go approaching that? I mean, is it, if you have to, say write a record with Jack Blades, I mean, do you sort of try to write within the realm of what they've done in the past with their work? Or is it just something where you listen to it and say, I mean, how much of your, own sort of, I guess, creation do you put into it? And how do you balance that out, I guess, with what they've also done as artists, and with their previous work that they've done?
Well, I always try to write something that can make them feel good. First of all, so I want them to feel comfortable in somebody else's clothes, because obviously, I mean, if I'm really deep into writing for them, that I want the lyrical concept to be right, and I want the tonality and the vocal melodies to feel good for them. I don't like to give them something that makes them feel uncomfortable, and they have to force themselves into being myself. So I just think the other way around. I'm writing for them. If I'm writing for them, it's it's mandatory that I'm writing specifically for them, so that they can feel that song can be part of their legacy. Obviously, most of the times I'm asked to get as close as to to the hits in terms of sound, but also to be I don't want to say modern, but to be up to date. And but I always approach, specifically for the singers. I have, I don't know, probably 200 songs that got rejected during the years. And I just don't go into that drawer and try to place
Mhm.
them. I kind of surrender to the fact that they didn't work. But sometimes you know I go like, oh, but I wrote that song that wasn't good for that guy, that it could work, so I reworked them, I changed them. But basically I always write from scratch. I don't like to dig into the past, because
Wow.
also for me, the way I write today, it's not the way I was writing a year ago or 2 years ago or a week ago.
Mhm.
So I want to see it, looking forward, trying to, to come up with something that's, original but classic, and, with great melodies. And to me, the melodies are everything. So first of all, I make sure that the melodies are sticking
Mhm.
and memorable somehow.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, Alessandro, I wanted to get into a little bit of the business of it here, and I'll be honest. Why? Because I really don't understand the business of it. I'll be honest. I mean, I've tried to figure it out. I actually know people in the Songwriters Hall of Fame, and I still don't know how how it all works. Let's just I'm going to throw a magical situation in front of you here, and you tell me how this would work. Let's say Journey of, I'm just throwing a band out there. Let's say Journey was contemplating writing with somebody that, and they're just had it in their mind that they wanted to write 3 songs with outside songwriters to see how it goes. Is there an organization that all of you guys that are songwriters are in, where they could go to that organization and they would get pitched by some person? Or would the fact that Neil Sean knows Johnny Gioeli, knows you, that he would kind of go that route, and friend knows a friend knows a friend type of a thing? How do the connections get made?
So there's basically 3 ways to do that.
Okay.
Uh, in that case, maybe Journey, I don't know. Neil Sean is driving his car, hears a song, likes the way it's written, checks the writers, and gets in touch with them. If the writer has a publisher, he has to go through the publishers first, because the publisher basically is the responsible of uh, putting those songs in, on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And they're responsible to, getting the best out of the songs. Another way is friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, like you
Right.
said. So I don't know, they know that John is writing with me, and they are curious to hear what I would do with them. In that specific case, they would have, or I would have to talk to my publisher and let them know that I'm writing for Journey, with Journey,
Okay.
or in that situation. The other situation is that my publisher is connected to various artists and organizations and producers, and they're constantly, checking if musicians or artists or producers are in need of songs. And if I have a catalog that's available, they can say, well, we have these 15 songs available. We want to make, sure that, you might need something, or if you need something, let us know and we will get our writers in action. What happens with Frontiers is not just my label, they're also my publishers. So
Okay.
what happens? They have an in-house publishing uh, side of Frontiers that's that was built because Frontiers wanted to do more records with the artists that they were signing. So
Okay.
basically, they were signing, I don't know, Dean Castronovo with Journey. They
Sure.
wanted to make sure that in case Dean Castronovo wanted to do a solo record, they would have writers ready to jump in and write great songs. Uh, so what happens in my situation, which is super super common. It happens in the country music, in pop. My publisher signs artists and uh, gives them different songwriters to write with. Then they pick who they want to who they want to work with.
Okay.
Uh, Frontiers has myself, Eric Martinson, Magnus Carlsen, and we're all in the same uh, uh, folder of some writers that are writing for Frontiers. And if the artists like what they hear, Frontier's job is to come to me and say, well, Ale, we have a commission for you. Can you write a song for this artist?
Okay.
Or can you write and produce songs for this artist? And this is obviously a win-win situation for both sides. First of all, I have somebody that's chasing work for me, that's creating work for me.
Sure.
On the other hand, I have to supply songs, so I have to be ready to, write songs. But in 10 years, I have been writing, I guess, 600 songs for Frontiers. So it's a
Wow.
lot. I think I have a 700 songs, 800 songs catalog, which for a 42 years old guy, it's amazing. But I couldn't have done it without a publisher. So what I always advise to songwriters is to try to get in touch not only with artists, because sometimes artists don't have I don't want to say they don't have a clue, but they don't have the power to bring songs to the publishers. I'll make an example. What was the name of the song that Whitney Houston song? The Bodyguard song. So that song was already written and released. Then the publishers of that song got in touch with the filmmakers, the director, the production of the movie, and they resurrected an already famous song. That is the job of the publisher. So, and it is vital to make your job as a songwriter a job, an actual real job.
Right.
Yeah, because without a publisher, you have to go, yourself knocking on the doors, which is fine if you have connections. And even if I had connections already before Frontiers, because I already worked with Stillwater, Kansas, half of Deep Purple, and Steve Lukather, and all these guys, I didn't have the contacts to send my songs to. So Frontiers, when I wrote that email to Frontiers, I didn't know that they had a publishing company. I only thought that they were looking for songs for their artists, but they had a bigger, much more structured organization. And I mean, that way I could, and they told me, well, if you're prolific, we'll make you work, because we have the contacts to make you work if you give us content. And, that was the occasion that I was dreaming of, because since I was a kid, I always created songs. I always wrote songs, and so it's a win-win situation for your label, for your publisher, and for you as a writer.
So then, okay, I'm getting a handle on this. So you submit these songs. You submit X number of songs. Jeff Scott Soto wants to work with you, and you wrote 10, 15 songs, however many songs you wrote for the Soto record. They picked 10. There's 5 left. Now, does the publishing company hold on to those and try to market those songs to somebody else? Or do those just go to the scrap heap or come back to you, and maybe you try to rework them to somebody else or to yourself, or what happens to those extra songs?
Well, those extra songs, if the publisher thinks they're good, they're gonna market them. They're gonna try to see if there's an artist that's in need of songs. But also, on the other hand, I will get requests. I get requests every week about
Okay.
songs, so I can then I go back to my publisher and ask them if we can give one of my songs to another band. Obviously, the business side of it, if I'm signed to a publishing company, they own the administration of my songs. So before I'm able to give my song to another band that's not on Frontiers, that's not related to Frontiers,
Mhm.
there have to be papers to be signed, because
Right.
that band has to make sure that my song
Hmm.
is marketed the right way with the administration of Frontiers, because I won't be able to go checking in, Australia or Singapore or South America what my song did.
Mhm.
My
Right.
publisher is gonna go and chase my literally, publishers have to chase money, especially nowadays in the digital world. They
Sure.
have to go on YouTube, as Spotify. It's all different drawers, and that's their
Hmm.
job. If I had to do it myself, I would have to hire uh, an entire office of maybe five,
Sure.
7 people only working for that.
But
Mhm.
but the other side of that, and correct me if I'm wrong though, is you could have a great offer, like I don't know, let's say Garth Brooks wanted to buy some song. And I'm just putting somebody huge
Yeah,
up there.
yeah, yeah.
If Garth Brooks wanted to buy your song and you had a conversation with him and he said, I promise this will be my first single, which all but guarantees you, a number one country hit just because that guy wants to work on it. It could legitimately not happen because the publishing company can't strike the right deal with Garth Brooks, no?
Yeah, it happened many times in the business. There are it's probably the longest list in the business of songs
Wow.
where publishers couldn't find a deal, because obviously, can you imagine if a song of mine gets number one on Billboard, and the publishing rights are not uh, correct, they're not administrated in the right way, and somebody else is making money and not me.
Yeah.
That is my right. They're called publishing rights or copyrights because of that, because
Mhm.
these are it's the only right you have on your creation. And obviously, when there's business and there's money involved, it's a mess. But in that case, that Garth Brooks wants to work with me, it would be in everybody's interest to find a deal.
Right.
And most of the times they can find it. Obviously, the big fish will have the big slice, but it's also right. It's a proper process, because obviously I'm a professional musician. I have million views, 100 million views on YouTube, and I don't know how many, probably sold, I don't know, 100,000 copies. I cannot count now, but I'm an established professional musician. I'm
Right.
making my living out of it. I got people uh, that I that are employed by me, so I have a structure.
Mhm.
But obviously, if I get to work with such a way more established artist, uh, that occasion has a price. Nobody's gonna come and say, "Well, Ale, I like your song. I want to make it number. It's gonna be my number one hit out of the album." And I make money and they don't make money. That doesn't make
Right.
sense, because the business side, it's not, if you obviously, if you want to see the romantic side of it, you go like, oh, it's not fair. But it's actually, it's the it's it's the right way of doing the business, because everybody, depending on how much output they're gonna put into the work, they're gonna get a slice out of it. And
Well,
obviously,
but
yeah.
let me ask one quick question out of that though. So then, has it been your experience that an artist, let's say an artist does half and half, they hire you to do half of their songs and they write half of their songs. Does the artist then lean toward the songs that they wrote to be the featured tracks just because from a financial standpoint it's a better deal for them if it takes off?
Well, if the artist has the power to choose singles,
Mm.
it can happen. It can happen, but the single choice has to go through the band and managers and labels and publishers and distributors. There's a big filter. Obviously, when there's money to be made, there's always a fight. And I've been there that sometimes, artists were like, well, but I didn't write the single, so it doesn't make any difference for me if the single, is not out of my pen, because I won't make any money out of it. So you have to, work around the situation. And it didn't happen to me, but I directly, but a song that I wrote 20 years ago for the Italian pop world.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote the entire song. Then the song never got released, but we got up to the discussions were up there with the artist, and we're talking about the Italian Mariah Carey. Like, she's super famous. I wrote this song, and my publisher back then was Warner, and they were, the first question was, Ale, how much do you want to give up to let the artist be involved and encouraged to use it as a single?
Okay.
And I was young and unexperienced, and I was like, does it work like that? So at the end of the day, after lots of negotiations, I had to give up part of my rights to the artist, to the publishing company of the artist,
Okay.
to a radio company that's major in Italy, because they were promoting the song. And so there I understood that it was just, common practice to do that, but I couldn't understand the business side of it. I was like, well, but one day I was like, oh, you're not going to use my song anymore because that's my song, and and somebody's going to take my rights. But obviously I was unexperienced and I couldn't understand the machinery behind it.
Right.
But then I had to study, because publishing is the most difficult subject and most difficult to understand, because it's different in every country, every situation. So you have to study a lot. So back then I learned a lesson that, there are common practices that are super fine. It's not, morally wrong if I'm a super established artist and I give, the occasion to an unknown writer, and we share, good, in good faith, we share, the future incomes, because it's a win-win situation in music. It's more of a team effort. And but then after that situation, I had to learn and understand the way the business was working, because I was like, wow, so what am I doing wrong? Because the song is great, but then at the end I fucked up. I destroyed everything, because I was like, well, you're not going to use my song because that's my song, and there are 10 other entities writing, depositing the song
Right.
with me. And but then I understood that, especially in the pop world, it's common practice, because lots of these singers, they don't know how to write, but obviously their voice will make a trademark out of the song. It's like Aerosmith, the band Aerosmith.
Yeah.
They they write some of their songs, but after the reunion in 86, whatever, they basically never wrote a single on their own. They were always writing with somebody else. And there are songs that they didn't write anything, but the way they could translate the original demo into an Aerosmith song totally changed, first of all, the way people will perceive the song, and second, the fame of the song itself. So they were sharing also
Sure.
on songs they didn't write, and it's common practice.
Mhm. Yeah, no doubt. And
So,
so, Alessandro, I mean, we've obviously been talking now about you writing for other artists. Let's talk about now you writing your own music, because we all know you're a great producer and songwriter, but you also are a great artist yourself, releasing your own music. Talk a little bit, I guess, to just the difference about what goes into now, or how you, I guess, what's the difference in terms of when you're writing from someone else and also now writing for yourself. For instance, tracks that you do use on your records for your bands, are some of those songs that you had written for prior artists that got rejected, that came back and you were like, but you believed in that song so much where you might have then taken it and sort of rewrote it or reworked it to fit what you do with your own band and music? Talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah, that that happened in the past, and it will happen that maybe a song gets rejected, but I'm very attached to it, so I rework it for my own band. But basically, when I write for Edge of Forever, I write for Edge of Forever. I I I don't give myself a second shot. I just want to write, and be very. I'm very. I became very personal with Edge of Forever, because that's the only place out of the million other songs and records that I do where I can be just myself without any filter. The only filter I have is the way the record is going to go. If it's going to be good, it's going to be because of us as a band and because of our songs. Uh, so when I write for myself, I'm very, very personal. And I'm also within the band camp. After so many years of experience, I'm very jealous of not having external influences. We were asked in the past if we wanted to work with an external producer, or if we wanted to have a special guest, especially nowadays with my phone book. I could get anybody as a special guest, but I really became it really became a matter of you know our own camp. I don't want
Mhm.
any external interference. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, well, we did it. We at least we tried.
Mhm.
But I'm very personal about what I write for myself.
right. And,
Mhm.
and just interestingly, it might not come off as special to the fans for you because most people know that you know everybody. So it's not like, holy shit, this guy is Jack Blades is playing a solo on the Edge of Forever record. People will be like, oh yeah, he wrote with Jack Blades. Okay,
Mhm.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
yeah, but also, I
Mhm.
mean, in the past, I mean, on our first record, almost 20 years ago, we had Jeff Scott Soto singing a song with us and
Sure.
backing vocals, and
Mhm.
obviously that led to many other things that I've been doing with Jeff, and we've been friends forever. Then we had Igor Janola from Gothard and UDO playing some guitar solos. We had Carson Schultz on backing vocals. But at the end of the day, after so many years, we were like, if it has to be a feature, it has to
Mhm.
be something special. I don't know. I, there's a song where we want a female vocal. That is
Okay.
something that we cannot do, or we want, I don't know, a Brazilian percussion ensemble. It is something that we cannot do,
Right.
or I don't know, rap, whatever. It's
Whatever.
not in our talents. We might do that, but then that becomes a special feature, and it's all different. But if it's not for that, I don't think it's worth, because I've been working with everybody. It would never be special unless we have a fantastic song that can change the history of rock and roll.
Mhm.
And we get, I don't know, fucking Brian Adams to sing it. Maybe
Right.
it
Mhm.
will make a difference, but on the artistic point of view, and also, I don't know, I just feel uh, that I'm already doing music with them, so I have my outlet to do
Mhm.
music with them. and
Fair
and
enough.
Sure.
honestly, I mean, we're asked, I don't know how many times some of the artists ask me, well, do you need songs? Do you want to write songs?
Mhm.
And I always go like, well, for other artists, yes, we can do it, but not for me. But it's not because I'm like, out of respect. It's only because it wouldn't, I don't know, maybe, I don't think it would make it, extremely different. And unless it is something, a fantastic feature, but
Mhm.
unless it's something like that, I don't think it's worth.
Sure.
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, and I know you touched on before, obviously, that to do what you do, you've got to be very humble. You really have to check your ego. You have to really have, like you said, check your pride. But at the same time, I mean, except for hardcore, music fans like me and Chris, for instance, I mean, we're guys that obviously like to dig deeper into the music beyond just listening to it and what the band or artist name is. No one's gonna really, I guess, know that a lot of times that you're actually the one that's writing and recording, and producing this music. I mean, like with Jeff Scott Soto stuff. I mean, you arranged that whole last album. So when people hear it, the first thing and the only thing they're gonna know is, oh wow, Jeff Scott Soto wrote this great album. Um, and I have to think though, is even though you are a very humble person, it's got to at least eat at you maybe a bit to know that people, just generic music fans in general, when they hear this stuff, they don't really know that you're the guy that's doing this, that's writing everything, arranging everything. So I mean, how are you really able to just do all this work and really be okay, with people not really realizing that this is a lot of this is you and not so much that artist.
See all that nice equipment around him? That's how, because he can afford it.
That's my Studio B. That's the little
But
one, because
no,
that
but
one we're mixing there. So, but well, I know I did that, and which is the
Right.
most important thing.
Sure.
Obviously, I would like to say that I'm not in the music because of fame, but obviously I like recognition. And
Mhm.
talking about Jeff Scott Soto, if there's an artist that never stopped talking about me in interviews, that's
Yeah.
Jeff. So
Yeah,
Right.
he always does.
there
He
are
does.
lots of artists that are very grateful. Most of them are. They are very, very grateful, and they have no ego. And they say, "Well, I did this album. It's a great album, but I gotta thank my team, my
Mhm.
guitarist, my songwriter, my producer, and that's Johnny Gioeli, Yorn. They the especially the people that I've been working a lot with them, like Robbie
Mhm.
McCauley. I never saw an interview where they were like, "Oh well, it's all about me." So, especially because these guys have been doing, the this job forever. So probably their ego was washed out years ago,
Well,
but
yeah, true.
also because they were able to stay in the business, they know the importance of the team. Obviously, I mean, sometimes I don't know. My most successful song is
Mhm.
"Back on My Trail" by Revolution Saints, and I scroll the comments and they go, "Oh, what a great song!" And and some of those they don't know that I wrote it and arranged and produced and did all backing vocals and this and that. But it's fine. I mean, it's like imagine being a director and a movie director,
Yeah.
and your movie is known
True, yeah,
everywhere,
you're right.
Nobody knows. They know
Right.
the actors because obviously they are the
Well,
faces of the movie.
well, but I think the difference is, yeah, they know the actors, but see, you are also a musician with your own music too. So I think it's a little different. You know what I mean? Where I mean, yes, directors are directors, but don't know how to act. But you know how to play music and sing and do what you do for others. So I just think, but I do understand that what compare. Yeah.
You broke up, Matt. Andy froze up. I'll
Yeah.
I'll go.
Sorry.
I'll pick this up because I think what he's trying to say is it's certainly in one respect you can be humble, but in the same respect there's not professional but personal need. You didn't get into the music business to be unknown. That's just
Totally.
the
Yes.
way it goes,
But I get, honestly, I get my share of recognition from the
Sure.
artists, and the fact that they keep on coming, to I don't want to say use, but in a good way, use my talents.
Mhm.
It's because I'm part of their legacy. So
Sure.
I take it, and obviously I'm a singer myself too, so I'm a prima donna, sometimes too. But that is why I am, I'm pushing on the accelerator for Edge of Forever, because maybe we will never be famous as the people I work with, but we're in the same camp, and eventually people will go like, oh my god, I mean, this is, what the most common comment is always like, oh my god, Ali, I didn't know that you could sing like that. And
Right.
and Jeff Scott Soto, Johnny Drady, they would go like, oh, obviously Alice sings like that. I mean, he wrote those songs. Where do you think those melodies come from?
Right.
But
Mhm.
I take it. Obviously, I mean, you have to do some meditation before, and not take that personally, because obviously, I mean, it's it could be tough, and I know
Right.
I've seen some writers go nuts because they're like, well, but I wrote the song and nobody's talking about me. Well,
Right.
yes, because you're not,
Yeah.
you're not there pushing the song. I mean, and that's why also on my social media, or wherever I can talk about it, I'm always very frank about it. Obviously, I would love to be the voice of my biggest hit, but without Dean Castronovo, Jack Blades, and Doug Aldrich, I wouldn't have had that
Yeah.
greatest hit. So
Mhm.
I take only the good of it.
Sure.
I don't need to focus on, I'm still, my keyboards are there. The song is mine. My keyboards are there. The mix, the production is mine. The backing vocals are mine. I'm there. Obviously, I mean, especially nowadays, credits, especially on YouTube and Spotify, hopefully they're right. So people will, some people will go like, well, who wrote the song?
Right.
And
Mhm.
like when I was a kid, I was checking credits in CDs and
Sure.
cassettes, and I was
Mhm.
the first credits that I checked was from Queen, and I was completely blown away by the fact that that some of my favorite songs were written by John Deacon, and I was like, okay, so it's not just Freddie Mercury; it's the whole freaking band. And but who knows that Radio Gaga was written by Roger Taylor. They will
Right.
always
Mhm.
relate Queen more, to Freddie. And I
Sure.
guess you gotta, if you want to stay in the game and be sane and not get crazy about everything and getting everything personal, taking everything personal, you just accept the rules of the game.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, ultimately, in a way, not to take the fun out of it and make it completely business, but that's what you're selling. Part of what you're selling
Mhm.
is you're selling the fame that may come from that song. I
Yeah, totally.
Mhm.
Yes. I mean, obviously in the press releases of Edge Forever, I'm always against, putting all the names that I've been working with
Sure.
out there, because obviously that would help, oh, that's the guy, or this,
Mhm.
but then, I just want to, I just want to have my little island as a
Right.
as an artist, and just make it on my own. And and so many times I'm asked, why don't you ask the musicians you work with, the artists you work with, to promote your songs or endorse you as an artist? And I'm like, if they want to do it, they know that they can
Yeah.
do it. Some do it. They're like, some really do. uh some others just don't maybe they don't realize that it would be amazing to to share, the this sort of community
Sure. Mhm.
effect in the music. But I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and honestly, some of them are looking at it as the business, the
Yeah,
business is
yeah,
once I bought it, it's mine, you know, and
yeah. And they would go like, well, but if I'm endorsing your music, I should take a
yeah,
slice out of it.
exactly.
I just don't want to make it complicated. If they want to do it, uh they will do it. And some uh maybe don't do it because they don't, sometimes they're jealous and they don't want to make it look like I'm working with everybody. They would, they want to make it look like, Ale, the relationship I have with Ale, it's very special. And in some cases it is, like just
Right.
got sort of 20 years of friendship. Or
Sure.
Johnny Joeli and Yorn, we've been sharing stages, and obviously. But some are, a little, obviously they're human beings, so there's,
Mhm.
waves into their heads.
Sure. Well, let me ask you this, Ali. We see, and you see it as well as I do, and I'm sure your eyes pop out of your head when you do see it, the same as ours. We see these massive deals right now where people are selling their catalogs. They're selling, here's 300 million, here's 500 million. Alice in Chains, just some of the members sold some of their rights for $50 million. I mean, these big, big numbers.
Wow.
And for you, a prolific songwriter, I know you wouldn't be able to sell exactly what they're selling, but is that something in the future that maybe you kind of look at as your retirement piece, that you could sell all of your publishing for all of the songs that you've done to Blackstone or whatever, that so that they can market it and feature it to movies and commercials and blah blah blah? Is that any part of your end game, or is that so new that you never thought of it, or
Well,
what?
it's been there, for years. Now it's evident because they all sold it at the same time, because
Right.
there's new faces in the business in terms of publishing. So the,
Mhm.
Blackstone and others are, entities that are, new on the market with new money,
Right.
with lots of money. So uh it all comes, you know if I always saw my catalog as my heritage for for my future generations.
Sure.
And so it all depends, if I have kids, if I'm gonna have kids. I don't think I'm gonna do it, but it is always a possibility. And publishers have been doing that for forever, since publishing was started. They were
Mhm.
selling catalogs to other publishers.
Sure.
And it could happen, and catalogs are seen uh as potential money, in if they're in the right hands, especially
Right.
movies and commercials. So what we're seeing right now is those new entities that are willing to make money and to reignite a business that is kind of new with the digital world. Because 20 years ago, the only way that you could resurrect a song was, a you give it to a famous artist, makes a cover out of it, becomes famous again, or sell it to a movie.
Mhm.
But nowadays with digital and all the occasions and possibilities of the digital world, it's all a different game. And the exploitation of songs, it's not, confined in, whatever years of a career, but it can be, it can, possibly be forever. If,
Mhm.
the digital world stays like that for 200 years, that's 200 years of exploitation of a catalog. While, uh, the common rule is that only your first generation is going to get the publishing money, and then when you're after, I think 80 years after you're dead, those songs become commonwealth.
Public domain, yeah.
Mhm.
If if you're making a cover of a Mozart song, you don't have to pay the rights, because that song became,
Yeah. Public
world
domain.
heritage. Yeah. But nowadays, with those new technologies, they're like, well, but it doesn't make sense, because we could exploit those songs forever
Mm-hmm.
in the digital domain. So these deals are also happening because of that, because there's new occasions, and it is something that, as a songwriter, obviously, when I read the Bruce Springsteen deal of 300 million,
Right.
whatever it was,
Yeah.
I was, oh my God, can you imagine, in 20 years, I don't want to do this anymore. Just want to retire at the Bahamas and,
Right.
and strike a deal that's just a fraction of that. But, obviously, you know, a, a catalog is a catalog. So
Mm-hmm.
it's, something that you have there, and it is something that you build, and it is something that you can sell in case. And there are also artists that sold their catalogs in their 20s, simply because they needed money. Lots of famous artists that, maybe went broke, sold their
Yeah. So
their catalog. Think the Beatles catalog when was bought by Michael
Michael
Jackson.
Jackson.
That
Right.
was the same
Yeah.
same exact deal in different times and age. And I think there was more of a pride thing to it, instead of saying, well, I'm gonna exploit the Beatles catalog. It was more like, I'm the freaking king of the world, and I'm buying the,
Yeah,
best
exactly.
songwriter
Mhm.
catalog in history. Here we go. So,
Yeah.
Right.
but but those songs haven't been. I think Paul McCartney bought the rights back somehow. And
He
I'm
did. Yeah.
not sure. Yeah,
Okay.
and there have been artists that, that bought their own songs back out of
Mhm.
Sure.
those deals.
Yeah.
I'm
Well, I
still waiting. I'm still waiting to see what the Rolling Stones catalog is going to
My
go for.
God.
right?
That's got to be if Springsteen is 500 million, which is what I think the number was. The Stones have to be double that, just because there's double the
Yeah. Yeah.
volume.
Yeah, yeah, and double the, Bruce Springsteen. I love Bruce Springsteen as one of my favorite artists and songwriters, but the Rolling Stones have been there for ages, and
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
the
Yep.
trademark out of
Yeah.
it is just
Mhm.
outstanding. But yeah, but it's been a trend in the last months, simply because there are these new entities that are, it's not, Warner, it's not BMG, it's not Sony, the
Yeah.
names changed,
Mhm.
because it's a different domain. Honestly, what I'm waiting for is a Spotify publishing deal. That's, Spotify is gonna buy, or Apple Music, or Amazon.
Yeah.
That's very probable. uh they're gonna buy catalogs out of artists, and that is gonna be a sign that the digital domain is gonna be, here for years to stay, because
Sure.
Mhm.
the investment is gonna be very big.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
No
I think that's
question.
one of the good things about, Frontiers is that they're really, they have such a unique, I'd say, model. They're one of the labels that really, 20 years ago, as you mentioned earlier, when everything changed, I mean, they really embraced it, where a lot of these labels did not. I mean, they just keep still, a lot of them still to this day use the same model. They still haven't really adjusted. And I think that's one of the reasons why Frontiers, has been so successful globally, is because they really embraced, that early on when a lot of labels didn't.
Yeah, totally. Yes, I mean, obviously we all know that if we could sell the same amount of CDs compared to streams and YouTube views, we all would be richer. I mean,
Right.
there's no comparison in in selling a physical product and streaming your own song. But it's the world we live in. You gotta accept it, and especially if you look at it at the whole picture on the business side of it. If you're in the business and you're not too big to change the rules, the most intelligent move that you can take is to embrace the rules and work within those rules, creating your own business model. I mean, in the metal world, especially in Europe, we're left with basically 4 labels: Nuclear Blast / Atomic Fire, AFM, Century Media, Inside Out, and Frontiers.
Right.
Out of all the big companies, and the fact that the metal world embraced the market the right way is that Century Media is owned by Sony. Nuclear Blast was bought by Believe Digital. So, I mean, the necessity to survive in the business really created a model, an independent model that really stood, against the tide. If you think of how many major we lost, we had Capital, EMI, RCA, all this and that. Now it's only probably 2 big consortiums. There's Sony and there's Warner, I guess, with Universal. Yeah, I mean, it's out of 100 labels, only 3 are left. But the metal world stood, and Frontiers was you have to give kudos to the fact that they took a dead genre,
Right.
and and resurrected those names within the new market. I mean, if you think the success that Striper, Whitesnake, Journey had on Frontiers, it's Total. I mean, Total haven't been on radios in Europe for years, and then out of the blue, they were able to be on radios because Frontiers was embracing the new model and wasn't acting like a major. And because also the big difference between the major and the independent labels is the number of people that work. And a major company has, I don't know, 20 offices in 20 different countries, and they have to control different markets. But independence is stripped down. There's more manpower. There's more work on the singular person, but there's a completely different system that's that obviously in a business, at the end of the day, it's the numbers that have to be right. But the proportions are different, and yes, Frontiers was able to survive, and all these new artists that they're signing and that we're developing are a sign that Frontiers is here to stay with the new generation of rock. I mean, there's Frontiers for years, there were like all these old bands there, and there was no space for young artists. But in the last 5 years, Frontiers shifted. If you look at the catalog, it's the other way around. There's maybe one big name and 20 new bands, because that's the only way we can we can create the future of this business and our music.
No, you're absolutely right, man.
Right, yeah.
Well, the one thing I'm happy about with Frontiers is that they are promoting your band, Edge of Forever. You have both Seminole, which just came out, and then you reissued basically your back catalog. So talk a little bit about not only Seminole, but about the reissues and where people should go to get them and those things.
Well, so the reissues are coming out on March 11th, so very, very soon. And they can go on the Frontiers shop. We have an American shop and a European shop, or they can write direct to us on our social media or on our website, and we're shipping signed LPs and CDs of Seminole, t-shirts, and the brand new box set. It's going to be a 3 CD box set with
Great.
the remastered versions of our first 3 albums that, were out of stock 20
Right.
almost 20 years ago. So we're I'm very happy that on the heels of the success of Seminole, Frontier was like, we should do it now. It's the right time to do it. And we're going on tour. We're starting in 3 weeks in March. We have already something like 12 gigs in the spring. So we're pushing to promote the band, and so it's good also to have our back catalog back in on the digital streaming services and physically out, because for years, because the first album was out of stock 6 months after we released it.
Right.
And for almost for 18 years, at every show, there were people like, "Oh, do you still have copies of Feet in the Fire?" I was like, "No, I mean, I have the rights. I could re-release it." And they were like, "Oh, you should." So, Frontiers was very kind to come to me and say, "Well, we should remaster and reissue those albums. There's interest. Let's make people happy, and we have more catalog for you out, and we can have them on the digital streaming services and YouTube and these places."
Sure, no doubt. Well,
Right.
one more time, the band is Edge of Forever. The newest release is Seminole, but the other 3 are coming soon. And they're coming to a town in whatever country you are at some point. For sure they're coming to some towns in some countries, and it's our greatest hope that they're coming to all towns and all in all countries here soon. But Alessandro, this has been fantastic, man. And
Yeah.
and I'll tell you straight up from me, and I'm sure Matt agrees. Songwriting as a profession is the one area of the business not a ton of people know a ton about.
Mhm.
And it's really, really, we really appreciate your time to kind of share the inside baseball look at it, man, because I
Yeah.
learned more today than I have in 10 years about this stuff.
Thank you very much. And it's the songwriters are the unsung heroes of the business, because sometimes we never know their faces, but but I think it's good knowledge also for the listeners to understand what's happening behind the scene, because that initial spark of the creation is, you don't see documentaries of artists sitting down in their rooms writing songs. It's
Right.
more like performing
Yeah.
in the studio. So it's a step forward, and whoever wrote the song is like, okay, can we at least feature me who wrote the song? But I think it's also in my opinion, it's always been interesting for me. I always looked at books, to understand what
Mhm.
how these guys were making it. And but I also saw attending a workshop, and one songwriting guy, it was only writing for movies. It was
Okay.
like, the best thing you can do in the business is writing songs,
Mhm.
because out of few hours of work on a song, you'll make money forever. So
Right.
keep writing. And at that time, I was probably, I only had the first 2 Edge of Forever albums, and I was about to start working with the Ian Pace of Deep Purple. And I remember I was like, I don't know if he's right. I was already in that, kid
Right.
situation, going like, I don't know if he's telling me the truth, but he was right. I mean, it was right. I mean, some of the songs I wrote, it took 2 hours of work, and all I had to do is to send it to the universe, hope it would work, and
Mhm.
I'm still making money out of it. So there's really a possibility of making money with writing. There's it's like any other job, that's lots of work behind and lots of
Sure.
knowledge that you gotta have. But and and talent, obviously, to start with. But yeah, but yeah, I think it's interesting also for people, because
Yeah.
it's something that nobody talks about.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
No,
No,
you're
no, no.
absolutely right, man. And you're obviously one of the best and one of the most prolific that does
Oh
it.
yeah.
So, one more time, Alessandro, thanks so much for joining us here on Aftershocks.
Yeah. Thanks, Alessandro. Appreciate it, bud.
You're welcome very much, and anytime.